Some choices are made in battle, in the heat of it, in the noise, in the blood, in the split second where thinking stops and instinct takes over. Those choices are easy to live with, because you didn't choose them. They chose you. But some choices are made in silence, in a quiet room, with a full mind, with every consequence laid out in front of you like weapons on a table. And you pick one up anyway, knowing exactly what it will cost. This is the story of Jarl Halvard, a man who made the hardest choice a leader can make. Not in battle. Before it, Halvard had led his clan for 19 years. Not because he was born to it, because he earned it. One decision at a time, one winter at a time. One crisis survived and another approached, and another endured until the men around him stopped questioning his judgment and simply trusted it. That trust was not given quickly. It never is among men who have seen enough of the world to know that trust extended carelessly is trust paid for later in blood. But Halvard had earned it, every piece of it, and he knew, the way a man knows something he has built with his own hands, exactly what it was worth. The threat arrived in late autumn, not as an army, not yet, as a messenger, a man sent by Jarl Torvik the Red, the largest and most brutal force in the northern territories, carrying a single message written on a piece of cured hide. Halvard read it once, then set it down, then read it again, not because he hadn't understood it the first time, but because the second reading confirmed what the first had already told him. There was no good answer here. Torvik's terms were simple. Submit. Offer tribute. Acknowledge Torvik's authority over the territory. Send 3 of Halvard's best warriors to serve in Torvik's personal guard as a permanent symbol of submission. In return, Torvik would not attack. The clan would survive. The fjord would remain. The children would grow up. The alternative was equally simple. Refuse, and face an army of 800 warriors against Halvard's 140. Not a battle, a destruction. Halvard called no council that night. He walked alone to the cliff above the fjord, stood in the wind, and did what he always did when the weight of something exceeded what one mind could carry alone. He thought about the people, not the warriors. The people, the women who had built lives here, the children who had never known another home, the old men who had given everything they had to this stretch of land and this stretch of water, the ones who would never hold a sword, the ones who would die first. He thought about honor, what it meant, what it cost, what it was actually for. Honor among warriors is easy to understand. It is the code that holds men together in the worst moments. The agreement that says regardless of what happens we will face it as something more than animals. But honor that gets everyone killed is not honor. It is pride wearing honor's name. And Halvard had lived long enough to know the difference. He went back down before dawn, wrote his reply on the same piece of hide Torvik had sent. One word, agreed. The reaction was immediate, and it was exactly what he had expected. His best warrior, a man named Dag who had fought beside him for 11 years, came to him before the messenger had even left the settlement. His face said everything before his words did. You cannot do this. Halvard looked at him. I already have. You are surrendering without a fight. I am keeping 140 people alive. You are shaming us. Halvard held his gaze. Yes, he said quietly. I am. Dag stared at him. That's it. That's all you have to say? Halvard turned back to the window. That's all there is to say? Before we go further, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. These stories only get deeper from here. The 3 warriors left on a gray morning. Halvard stood at the settlement gate and watched them go. He didn't make a speech. He didn't explain himself. He simply stood there, as Jarl, as the man who had made this decision, and let them see that he was not hiding from what he had done. The settlement watched in silence. Most of them couldn't look at him. Some could, the ones with children, the ones who understood, even if they couldn't say it, what had actually just happened, what he had just paid so they wouldn't have to. The years that followed were survivable. Not good, survivable. The tribute was paid each season. Torvik's authority was acknowledged in every formal exchange. The warriors who had stayed looked at Halvard differently now. Not with hatred exactly, with something harder to define. The specific discomfort of men who had been protected by a choice they would never have made themselves, and couldn't fully forgive him for making on their behalf. Dag never spoke to him again. Not once. 11 years of standing beside each other in the worst conditions the North could produce. Erased. Not by a battle, by a word on a piece of hide. Halvard understood it. He didn't forgive it. But he understood it, because a man like Dag could not separate survival from surrender, could not see that sometimes the most courageous thing a leader does is absorb the shame so his people don't have to absorb the destruction. 5 years after the agreement, Torvik died, killed by one of his own men in a dispute over land. His territory fractured overnight. The tribute stopped, the authority dissolved, and Halvard's clan, alive, intact, still standing on the same fjord, emerged from the shadow of submission into something that looked almost like freedom. From the outside it looked like vindication, like the choice had been proven right by events. But Halvard knew better. He hadn't known Torvik would die in 5 years. He had made the choice without that knowledge. And the rightness or wrongness of a decision is not determined by what happens after. It is determined by what you knew when you made it, what you understood, what you were willing to carry. He lived 11 more years after Torvik's death. He never recovered the full trust of his warriors. Dag died without speaking to him. The 3 men who had been sent to Torvik's guard returned eventually, quieter, harder, carrying things they never spoke about. They looked at Halvard when they returned. He looked back. Neither group found words for what existed between them. On the last night of his life, Halvard sat at the edge of the fjord. The same water, the same wind, the same cold that had been there for every decision he had ever made. He didn't review the choice. He had done that 10,000 times already. He simply sat with it, the way you sit with something that is done and cannot be undone and was never going to be clean no matter which direction you chose. He had kept them alive. He had lost himself in the process. Both things were true. Both things remained true. And no amount of time or vindication or peaceful endings was going to change the weight of that. Some choices don't get better with time. They just become part of who you are. Permanent. Unresolved. Carried. Until you no longer can. What would you have done? 800 against 140. Would you have fought? Or would you have made the choice that kept everyone alive and lived broken inside it? Tell us in the comments. New stories every week. Subscribe to Beneath the Surface Stories, because it's never just about the battle. It's about what happens beneath the surface.